The goal of this lesson is to clarify the difference between a presenter and a facilitator, and to provide participants with recommendations for effective facilitation. This lesson will take approximately 15 minutes to complete. So, who am I? Well, for starters, my name is Naida Sulaveras, but of course I'm more than just a name. These two images represent parts of who I am. Can you tell me what you think these stand for? Well, I'm a student, and I'm also a teacher. I know for me, I'm continuously striving to learn more about training and instructional design, about my hobbies and how to better manage my household, and achieve my personal goals. I personally believe that the drive to learn more keeps you from becoming stagnant. Therefore, I take time weekly to do research, follow the careers of people I consider experts and hope to emulate, as well as take the new chunks of information I learn and apply them. You can take in a lot of information, but if you don't apply it, practice it, perfect it, then you lose it. Now, I apply the term teacher very broadly. I impart information to others in a variety of forms and methods. I have taught students via webinar on how to do their jobs more efficiently. I have trained users on new software that they've never seen. I have guided new hires on how to start off in a new role. And finally, I have facilitated in-person classroom discussions to help participants formulate ideas and find their strengths from being part of the group. When participants complete this lesson, they will be able to identify the difference between a presenter and a facilitator, describe what characteristics are possessed by a skilled facilitator, and also list valuable attributes that equate to an effective presentation. Presenter, trainer, or facilitator. Are these the same things? How might they be different? Do you think that people often confuse these terms? Why don't we find out? To maximize learning retention, you need to use the right mix of telling and listening. There are three primary types of in-person delivery: presenting, training, and facilitation. There are some out there that don't understand or even realize that these vary. What one might call training might actually be a lecture or a presentation. Sometimes we may use the terms facilitating and training inversely. Let's take a closer look to see how these differ. What do you think a presenter focuses on? Content, the process, or both? Generally, a presentation is content-driven and there is little to no engagement. There might be a few clarifying questions along the way, but the end goal is to get through the material. Whereas, facilitation is where an instructor is guiding a process of discovery. The class is prompted to think through concepts, there's an engaging discussion, and the goal is to use a process to help participants achieve the class goal, whether it's sharing information, generating ideas, or making decisions. I find that training is what many companies are seeking with in-person delivery. It's that sweet spot in between where the content is still a key factor, but the instructor will guide the class to make discoveries along the way, initiate engaging activities and discussions, but still covers all the content. What are deliverables? Well, this is basically asking, what is the goal of the session? Is the goal to impart information, develop or refresh skills, or to generate new insights through discussion? Approach. The content for any one of these three can be very similar, but the approach is figuring out how we get there. That's where each of these can vary. Again, is our goal just to present or tell bits of information? Are we trying to involve or teach our class a new concept or new skills? Or do we want to guide our class to figure out some new conclusions on their own? In the end, we arrive back to finding the right mix of telling versus listening for each delivery method. What's your guess on how much of the delivery should be telling and listening for presentations? About 80% should be telling and only 20% should be listening because again, we're trying to impart information. How about training? That should be about 50% telling and 50% listening. Finally, what are your thoughts for facilitation? In this method, it should be about 20% telling and 80% listening to the class and engaging discussions, again, guiding the process. Think of a time when you left a training session and felt the facilitator did a really amazing job. Most likely, it's because they possess the competencies of a skilled facilitator. They used the tools and techniques to create a participative environment. Not all training tools work across the board over all topics. It's important to fit the type of training or topic with the right tools, such as discussions or work groups. Can you think of some techniques you've seen in previous training classes? Oftentimes, the tools are things such as icebreakers, games, activities, role-playing, and working in small groups. An effective facilitator also creates an atmosphere of trust, confidence, and support. You need to try to treat everyone equally, no matter the title or experience, but use your more experienced audience to help you along the way to show that they are valued. Another competency is that the facilitator promotes empowerment of participants and being able to let go and trust the group. Basically, you never want your class to feel stupid. If you're asking questions, don't linger on the answer if you can see that they are having difficulties coming to those conclusions. Give them a couple minutes to try to figure it out, but then ultimately go ahead and provide the answer. A great facilitator also transfers a sense of ownership and responsibility to the participants. They'll often exercise effective listening, which is huge. If you're content-driven, you're not really going to even pause to ask questions or listen to the audience. Also, a skilled facilitator is going to be confident in the subject matter and the material or the process. They may not be the expert, but a great facilitator will take the time to thoroughly research their topic that they're discussing. You don't have to have all the answers, but you should be able to present in a very confident manner. Finally, great verbal skills and writing skills are a must. I remember having one of my participants find an error on my slide, and it was embarrassing and showed me that I needed to focus on making sure that the presentation was error-free before presenting. Now that you've had time to think of an instructor that's impressed you, what was a competency that they possessed that made you feel that way? Now, if you could, take a quick moment to watch this short clip. How would you feel after walking into a setup like this? Intimidated? Relaxed? Excited? Different people will feel differently about walking into a very formal setup. We can't always control the training environment or how people will react to a particular setup, but what we can control is how prepared we are with our content and delivery. How far in advance have you prepared in the past? Even if you're preparing at the last minute, do your best to set up what's important first. Figuring out things like audio and projector connections while the class is filling up isn't something that should be done at the last minute. Trust me, I learned this by experience. Have you ever had an experience where the instructor wasn't prepared? I've asked this question before, and what I get is that people generally will instantly start to tune out the information. If you're not prepared, they feel like, hey, why should I waste my time? We may not always be given a whole lot of time to prepare, but do your best to focus on what's important with the time that you have been given. Now, preparation isn't just about your classroom being pretty and your connections working properly. You also need to plan ahead for the structure of your presentation. Let's cover some additional steps. What outcomes do you want to achieve? By knowing your objectives and where you want to go will help you backtrack and figure out how to get there. How should the session be structured? What tools will be appropriate? Who is your audience? And how will you measure success? The WIFM, or what's more commonly known as, what's in it for me? This may be one of the most important acronyms you need to keep in mind as you create a presentation. After all, it's what audiences are thinking and determining if your content is helpful or another corporate waste of time. Adult learners tend to absorb more when they can see how the material relates to their work and are involved and challenged. When you define your presentation, you need to force yourself to focus on your key content and minimize fillers. Develop your central idea by providing no more than 3 supporting concepts. If you provide more than 3 supporting ideas in your presentation, your audience is likely to forget your content and takeaways when they try to recall your presentation in the future. Cut any excess content that does not clearly add value for the audience by clearly defining the overall message of your presentation. How would you say most presentations or instructor-led training is delivered? That's right, PowerPoint. Now, what do you think the number 500 represents? That's 500 million PowerPoint users worldwide. How about the number 30? That's 30 million PowerPoint presentations delivered daily, again, worldwide. And lastly, what's the number 15 stand for? Out of those 30 million presentations delivered daily, about 15 million, or half of them, are poor presentations. In my experience, I've had to endure many text-heavy, lengthy, and difficult-to-read PowerPoints. I just overheard someone this week say, "I don't care about the presentation that much, but the content is good. It's just not pretty." The message and the ideas the content needs to convey are obviously important, but so is the presentation and ensuring that the concepts are easy to follow and, more importantly, remembered after the class is over. What good is putting people through a class if they're overwhelmed with information and the lesson is ineffective? Now, I'm not going to read all of the bullets, but please take a moment to go through them to see key contributors to a poor PowerPoint presentation. Here are some visual examples of bad PowerPoint slides. The first, obviously, has a little bit too much going on with color. When everything is highlighted, nothing is highlighted, and it gets lost in the crazy color combinations. Next, we have a slide that is very text-heavy. Not only that, the image behind it doesn't allow for the text to be seen, so again, it's difficult to read. And last, we have a little bit of everything going on. When everything is animated and underlined and bolded and highlighted and the images don't make sense, the concepts are lost. So remember, design matters too. Your audience needs to connect with you and believe that you are a knowledgeable, sincere, and supportive facilitator. You can help achieve this by showing enthusiasm and passion for the subject matter. Now, you only get one chance to make a first impression, but sometimes, when you get in front of the class, your brain forgets that minor detail. You get to the front of the room and your heart beats a little faster, and your tongue gets a little thicker. Hands are maybe a bit sweatier. The fact that you're knowledgeable and enthusiastic no longer comes to mind. What can you do to regain your footing? Here I have some tips. First of all, smiling. Smiling can be a powerful tool. Not a terrified grin, but a warm and welcoming smile. It can help your audience feel comfortable, and it can be used to give you a moment to pause and think about your next words. Eye contact. Well, this one is a given, but don't only make eye contact with part of the room or people you're familiar with. Authority. Sometimes an engaged class ends up engaging side conversations or will challenge your data. This can be great, but it can also take over the room. Find ways to calmly redirect the room's attention to the next phase in the process. Chimes and bells have been used to subtly do the trick. Gestures. Try to keep your hand gestures small and natural. Try not to overkill because ultimately it can be distracting. Walk. Presenters stand at the front of the room and present. Facilitators should walk the room and help guide groups through discussions or workshops. Also, use your space to talk to all parts of the room. And last, honesty. We are expected to be the experts in the room when speaking to a class, but sometimes we just don't know the answer. It's better to tell the class you will find the answer or go back to them than to make something up that proves to be false. You end up losing credibility. This is the way you'll lose the class. It's okay to be nervous. Sometimes the added pressure drives us to do better, but only if it doesn't control you. What are some ways that you've established rapport with your audience? In conclusion, presenting, training, and facilitating are often confused as meaning the same thing, but there are key differences. It comes down to whether the focus is on content or the process. What is your goal? What approach do you want to take to get to the goal? And how much of your delivery is telling versus listening? Also, there are many competencies of a skilled facilitator, but mainly they need to be engaging, knowledgeable, and identify the right tools for the different training objectives. Lastly, effective content delivery consists of preparation, content, design, and good presentation skills. I'll leave you with this quote that I strive to live by. Every day is an opportunity to learn something new.